Hey guys, so I have recently tasked myself with replicating the infamous Siamese Dream tone, which is quite a challenge. I think it is crazy that 30 years on, nearly 1993, that this album is still, one of the most sought after guitar sounds. And not only that, but no one ever seems to come close. You don't really hear anything that sounds like it, even though it's such an iconic and important album for so many people. But yeah, so I have been working on replicating this sound, and I feel like I've got pretty close, but you can listen for yourself. I'll show you what I've got, and then I'll walk you through everything I've done to make it sound like that, and give you any tips that I have and things I've learned from achieving this kind of sound. So here's what I got. So that's the sound I've achieved. I'm pretty happy with it. I think it sounds really close, especially given that I'm using plugins here. And although I do love plugins and the technology is, it's come so far in the last few years, fuzz especially, I think is one of the things that can sound like very digital still, and just, it seems very hard to find a convincing fuzz plugin. So with that in mind, I think this is pretty close, given that I'm not using real pedals and amps. I'm just going to jump straight in and show you what I've done in here. This is me talking. You can see there's 2 tracks and then a group. It's pretty complicated as usual with these videos, but I'll walk you through each step. It's actually not too complicated. Like, you can get pretty close with just a few quick moves. All of the extra stuff and this and the EQs and stuff, that's just me taking it that little bit further. But the basic principles of this sound are quite simple, and you don't need to use any of the same things. I'll put all the links to these plugins that I'm using in the description, but whatever you're using, after what I'm going to teach you today, you'll know the basic principles you're listening for. So whatever you're using, you should be able to get pretty close. So here we have 2 tracks. I mainly did this just as a stereo, so you got left and right. Although I did use slightly different amps, but they're basically the same thing. So I started out with 1, and they have the same things, you can see. I've turned this off, but other than that, it's all the same. So just imagine it's 1 track. I'll mute this one, put this in the center, and you can hear that it still sounds like Siamese Dream. So basically, sorry, a lot of distortion going on. We did a fuzz. This is by Audiority. Big Goat is a Big Muff replica. I think it's really good. And as you can see, gone all the way down with the tone, because it just got it's harsh. Sorry. Just got too harsh with any of that dialed up. Sustain, however, full. Just because it wanted to sound so blown out. It's just such an intense, overwhelmingly it's like you're bathing in the guitar sound when you listen to Siamese Dream. So had to make sure that the distortion was super saturated. That's the word I'm looking for. After the Big Muff, I threw a Tube Screamer in. This is quite a gentle sounding one. So this is a plugin by Mercurial called SS11X. And it's basically like an amp, has cabinets, has reverb, has all this stuff. But I used a gate just because there's so much fuzz and distortion that it needed a lot of gating on the sound. But I used this Tube Screamer. It sounds fine without it, if I show you it without and then with. You might not even be able to hear that, but it just kind of rounds off the sound and makes it a little less throaty, I suppose. But I mean, this didn't really need to be in there, which is why I'm saying it looks complicated, but really I needed the fuzz, and the amp. So the amp I used, again, same company. They're not paying me. I just like the products, and this was free. It's, I believe, the small Marshall, like the little practice amps, 15 watts or something, 12 watts maybe, because it's called an L12. It's just a replica of that. I just pulled a load of mids out, boosted the treble and bass. I turned off the cab because it just didn't sound right, and that's actually one of the important things I learned. So this is just the amp head I'm using, basically. So it comes with a built-in cab that didn't sound good. So I used SS11X again, but this time I turned off the tube screamer and just used the cab. This was the most important part of finding this tone for me, because I've always thought it was down to the fuzz pedal you use, and I think most people are kind of looking for the right fuzz pedal for this kind of sound, but I found that most of these cabs, like this product comes with so many different cab sims, and most of them were so bad sounding. When you got this much fuzz going on, you need it to not sound too harsh, and I'll just show you through a few of the ones that I didn't use so you understand how important the cab is to this sound. So here's what I did use, and then some that I didn't use. Like I'm just selecting random cabs there. They all sound so harsh. They sound cool, but they're just too much of that going on. This one just has the right balance, I found. It's kind of smooth but harsh, because some of these were too smooth as well. So really, the way I did this, I just kept listening back and forth to Quiet and Today, and just playing through this sound and listening and just figuring out which one sounds closer, because there's so many different properties. Like, mainly I'm listening for the way the distortion breaks up and the sort of EQ curve of the cab, because you don't want it to be too bassy or too harsh. You want the right kind of sound, and that just comes down to using your ears. Then I just did some EQ moves, and like I said, panned this one right and this one left, and it's basically the same thing. I just turned off the tube screamer and used a different cab, this one, just for like the stereo effect, and then routed those through a group track with some more gating and just a bit of saturation and a bit of EQ, just to pull some harshness out. There was a lot of EQing, and I know I keep saying this looks really complicated, but if I show you this, like if I turn nearly everything off, this is what it sounds like. Still sounds pretty Siamese Dream-esque. So it ultimately comes down to finding the right fuzz pedal. I really recommend this for a plugin for fuzz, because most of them are crap. Got to find the right amp, and I just recommend for that finding something like a Marshall, or just something that at least has that saturation that really just is like all encompassing and not thin, and then just the right cab to shape the sound. And it is really that simple. It's just a case of using your ears. Oh, and the last little trick I did is with my sound card. I would never usually do this, and this is the thing people always tell you not to do. It sounded pretty cool clipping. If you watch this, my guitar input, it's red because I pushed it a little too hard. Still sounded cool without that, but fuzz is the one thing, in my opinion, where it actually can sound a lot cooler if you just push it a little too hard, so that you're getting in the red a bit. So that's just a little tip as well for this specific kind of sound. As far as all of this EQ, I just used Cubase stock EQs. I've never got hold of a Waves one or anything, just because I always manage with these. But I kind of have to work around the fact that it's a 4-band EQ, so I'm just cutting out a lot of harsh frequencies I'm finding. And then I boosted some high end here to make up for all of the cuts I was making, so that it didn't sound too, you want the brightness there, you just don't want the screechy, horrible stuff. So in summary, yes, this is a difficult tone to get, and this is a pretty complicated tutorial, But as long as you understand the few basic principles you need in order to achieve it, you need some good fuzz, you need a good amp, mainly the cabinet, and a good ear for EQing so that you can pull out all the harshness, because that's another thing with fuzz, that it can give you all this crazy blown out distortion. As long as you understand those three things, anyone can get close to this sound. So I hope I've given you some kind of information and something that was helpful today, and thanks for watching, guys.